Meeting of December 14th to order, school committee. Tonight, we are going to begin with our special education update from Mrs. Baker. Would you like to come up and start us off? Right to, I know. We don't have any presentations or awards, so you're on first.
I gave you a corrected copy. You'll see in yours.
It's this,
that,
this
the
piece.
third
That's-
slide. I know I had provided this to folks last year at the end of the year, and thought I just wanted to take a few minutes to go over it again. I think it's important just to get
Yep.
it.
Yep. Can I have you grab the mic? Thank you. Just so
Did it
it's,
come off or something?
yeah. No, otherwise, your mouth is moving and no one can hear you when the tape
Okay.
comes on.
So I thought it would
Thank
be a
you.
good idea to go over the department as it has evolved over the last couple of years and give you some statistics. And the reason that we like to do that is to see where we stand comparative to state averages, as well as look at any identification of trends that we may see in our district. Also, look at where we are currently, what we might need to do for future planning, what kinds of program development are in order, and recognize and advocate for resources and funding needs to support our programs. So statistic-wise, out of our enrollment, we were at 15.98%, which was still below the state average for students receiving special education services. This year, that percentage has gone down to about 15.2. And then I just gave a breakdown again out of the, among all the schools and out of district where we fell. And again, the next two slides that you have show the breakdown both for the elementary school all the way up through the high school. And again, those are numbers of special ed relative compared to regular ed numbers. I thought this slide was particularly important because it shows that our population of students on the autism spectrum are twice as high as the state average. And you'll see as we go through this PowerPoint, as well as questions that you may have, why we've made decisions that we've made relative to some of our consultation services. So this is the breakdown, and that's one area that particularly stands out. Placement statistics, as you know, full inclusion, those are students that are on individual education plans that are within the regular education classroom with support. Partial inclusion means they may be in a regular education classroom as well as a resource room, a smaller group. Substantially separate means that the majority of their educational services are provided out of the general education classroom, and then we break it down to outside of the schools are public separate day, private separate day, residential. And then we do have a percentage of students, primarily the preschoolers, who get walk-in services. Questions so far?
Are these stats as of now, right? Are these the
These
stats from
are-
the spring?
No, this was through last year.
Okay. Thank you.
I have some updates for this year, particularly with the out-of-district. So when we look at our out-of-district, although our numbers are going down, our costs are going up. And you'll see particularly for this year, the numbers have decreased significantly. However, this number in particular, our residential placements have gone up. And while it's the same amount, they became Oxfords as of July 1st. They were move-in. Yes, Mr. Peterson?
To what age are we responsible for residential?
22.
22? They didn't reduce that?
No, they did not. And there's one state in the Midwest, I'm not sure which one.
Michigan.
I'm sorry?
Michigan.
Is it Michigan?
Yep.
There, I think it's 25 or 26. Yeah. So I guess we can be a little grateful.
It's ridiculous.
Okay, then, so we saw this year. This is another area of special ed that we've been paying particular attention to, and it's really the behavioral supports that are needed for those children with social emotional needs, as well as children on the autism spectrum that have significant behavioral needs. So when we look at this, we saw that in the last 2 years, 13 students, and I mean 07, 08, and 08, 09, 13 students were placed out of district, specifically because of behavioral sports that we were not able to provide within the school building. And that's the cost of what that was related to. Applied behavior analysis is a particular type of behavior support for children on the autism spectrum. This is both necessary to service within the school as well as oftentimes at home. Now, in the absence of having somebody trained in ABA within our own district, we have to rely on outside resources. In 2008, 2009, we spent $25,000 in those outside resources for behavior support specific to ABA. This year, we're looking at $72,000.
Mrs. Baker? can
Yes.
Do we have someone trained in the ABA on staff?
We have staff that have received some training and have some experience in applied behavior analysis. However, what they refer to as a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst, we do not have on staff.
We do not.
Mr. Peterson?
The cost increase, is that the providers increased, or is that
No.
numbers increased?
Where am I?
And approximately how many numbers to that figure?
It's not so much the number of students as much as the number of hours that may have gone
Okay.
up for the home-based service,
For those same students?
for those students as well as others. It could be, it's a combination. So some of the students that were getting it, their hours may have increased. Additional students have been added on.
Have any of these, where do we stand as far as the actual, how do I want to word this? Is it beneficial? Is it working? Are any of them dropping off this behavioral support system?
Well, ABA is significant in terms of, as they're in preschool and early grades, to help train them. And yes, we are successful in that. It's not that you need less services, but we're paying for outside. If we had our own,
So none of
we could
these
be
are
providing more and providing training. We could have parent groups within the district. There's a lot of different avenues we could take.
But behavioral, to my understanding, should not be long-term. Is it such or not?
There's two different types. There's we're talking about applied behavior analysis, which are for
Okay.
the younger students on the autism spectrum. And yes, over time, that does, decrease.
Okay.
However, when you look
You
at
have
that,
new
we're
ones.
double the state average, there's, more coming in.
Any idea why we're double the state average? I mean, is it because
Well,
our
we have
program is
two
known?
great
Is it
programs. Yeah, we have people that move into Oxford.
Because of the
We
program?
tuition in students into those programs, and
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
the network of parents who have children with this disability is very strong, and they network
Good job.
together, and they look for the resources as any of us would.
Right.
Mr. Peterson?
Is the tuition in students, is it covering it? Or are we,
No, students that we tuition in, if they require ABA, we charge back for that.
We charge
The-
back, so
these
it
numbers
covers it.
aren't, it's not our tuitioned-in kids that are reflected in those numbers.
this is all our own on the
These are
board
all
right
our
now?
own. Yep,
Thank you.
okay. When we have behaviorists, whether through consultation or if we had our own, their role covers a lot of things. We're looking at training and consultation for teachers, instructional aides, parents. They help develop functional behavioral assessments. They individually tailor behavior plans and crisis intervention plans. They're going to look, compile, and track the data and analyze that, and always giving a continuous feedback to help monitor these students and staff and parents. Within our district, as I mentioned, we have 5 substantially separate programs. We have the one Project Duke at the pre-K, K1 level. It continues for grades 1 to 4. At our middle school, we have a functional life skills program. We have that similar program, but at a higher level at the high school. And our Project Success is for severe special needs children. Out of all of these programs, we have 8 students who are tuitioned in right now. As I looked back last year at the first 2 years since I've been here, realizing that when we had the state CPR, we had a corrective action plan that we had to follow, and we've completed that whole process. We've met each item within the corrective action plan. So we're okay now till 2011 when it starts all over again. We have a new special education data system called SEMS Tracker. It is web-based. It allows a lot of communication among teachers and both special ed and regular ed. It provides a lot of opportunity to attach files, and you know, the intent is to give as much information out there so that regular ed teachers, counselors, nurses, whoever, you know, need to be able to provide the best services to these kids. There's a lot more interagency collaboration going on now than has ever been before. Part of it is from the Rosie D case, and I'm involved in many of those meetings. You know, in the past, DMH or DMR or these other agencies would always look to the school, say, well, you just fund it, you know. Now we sit around a table and kind of look at where resources should be allocated. And again, continual look at that for future planning. As you know, we contracted with Futures Health Corps to do an analysis and help us create district-wide entry and exit criteria. I'm sure we'll be going over that in more detail. The partnership with early childhood and early intervention has increased. These are kids that are coming out of early intervention. One of the team chairs in the district assumes that responsibility as a coordinator, so we're trying to get as much information as possible early on as kids are coming in and what their needs may be. Just as we look at areas within our district, the state is doing the same thing. 2 areas in particular are transition services and preschool, and we, as a district, participate in both of those areas. We've had a lot of professional development the last 2 years, whether it's in terms of IEP writing, behavior management. We've tried to target the neediest areas of our population and provide that training to have staff be as skilled and experienced and comfortable. And as always, we continually try to get our Special Education Parent Advisory Council intact and up and running, and you know, it has always been one of my goals to continually build relationships with parents and have them involved. As I look ahead, I think one of the things that all districts are faced with is what the program needs are, where the staff and professional development needs to be, and how we as neighboring districts can pool our resources and try to look at partnering in different ways. Also, we need to always, as this comes from the state, it's required as part of CPR, and it's just good practice to always look at and ask the questions of how we're doing with our programs. And that's why I said both formally and informally. We want to continually increase technology and how we integrate that data with what we do on a day-to-day basis. I meet monthly with the special education staff within each building, always looking at ways that we can address the concerns, strive for improvement. Another big area that has always been a goal of mine is that continual integration of special ed and regular ed, being pushed in more together across the district. And I have to say, this is now my third year, and we have made great strides in that area. The other thing that, as we look ahead, we want to look at more is how we identify students, how we use our pre-referral process to look at what need areas there may be and put some interventions in place prior to there ever being a special ed referral. And the umbrella of the Special Services Department does include homelessness, so the state is looking at this quite a bit. We don't have as significant area of this as other districts, but there's lots being done on the state level, so I wanted to include that data. Okay.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm sure we have all some questions, so have a seat. And we thank you for coming in. Mr. Peterson, do you have your hand up?
Yes, but if you have someone else wants to
No.
go first, I don't care. I have a few, so.
Okay, that's fine. Questions, concerns? I assume.
The pages aren't numbered, so Ms. Baker, I don't know where you want to. I'm going district-wide special education highlights. I kind of,
Well,
forgive me for being a little bit behind on keeping up with you, but the students tuitioned in, revenue pass-through, seems to be an astronomical figure for 8. Does that cover all administrative costs? Are we recouping everything on those tuitioned in students? Again, that's follow-up to the question I had earlier to you.
Yes.
Wow. Why do we have the room and do we have the resources to continue with these type tuition students, and how do they come to us?
Well, room is always a question.
Thank you.
And we could probably,
Do we have the, I guess I'll cut to the chase, do we have the right to deny any of these coming into our system?
we have not to this point denied anybody.
But do we have
But-
the right?
Well, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Where do we stand with the futures contract, Mr. Himmelberger, or whoever signed that contract? Because none of us saw the contract or were aware of it until the final presentation. I would like to see a copy of that contract provided to us, the board, Madam Chair.
wait, I put that down.
Are you asking me where we stand with it?
To either one that the chair would like to recognize.
Yep, if you want to, Ms.
Sure.
Baker, go right ahead.
Well, as you recall, we brought Futures into our district last year to conduct a clinical service analysis to show how we're identifying and servicing special needs children, specifically to speech and language therapies, occupational therapies, and physical therapies. And how we were looking at what the effectiveness and efficiency of those services were. So as a result, we were able to develop entry and exit criteria and look at key areas to address relative to educational relevance. What we need to do continually when we look at our therapy services is remember that we are a public school. We are here to provide a free and appropriate education for children in the least restrictive environment, and that we want to make sure the model of our therapy services falls in line with the educational relevance and the school-based model of therapy services. And so Futures helped us define that through our entry and exit criteria, provide training, and it's made a difference so far.
I guess my question was, where do we stand with that contract? Was that a one-year contract? Or-
When we brought
and-
them in last year, it was through a grant-funded, it was through grants that we paid for them. This year, They are, we also paid for a one-year contract to help us as an outside consult through a grant as well, and help us manage the therapy services and the direction we're moving with the model of those services.
So you've renewed it for a second year through a grant again?
It's through, yeah, this year.
You have renewed it for a second year? Yes or no?
It was two different.
It was a 2-year grant
No.
originally, 1-year grant?
No, well, the first year, the grant was specific to the analysis. As
For
a
the study.
result of that, yes. As a result of that, we decided this year to contract with them to help us
So your answer is yes, you've contracted for a second
a
year?
second year.
It's being
That
paid
was my
for by a
question.
grant.
But,
But that's being paid for by a grant.
yes,
Also a grant, a second year.
That's
So
correct.
when does that run through?
June 30th,
Of what year?
2010.
3210? Are we done studying and moving forward, I guess, because this is the third study in the last 4 or 5 years?
What do you mean, are we done
Are
studying?
we done studying? And the initial grant was to study what our problems and needs were, and they reported to us at a meeting at one time. Now, this second year is to what? Monitor, do the work, or?
It's to be a consult as a bridge this first year, to be available to consult with team chairs, who are the facilitators of team meetings.
So the second year now is the first year of, quote, consultation,
If, I guess you can look at it that
is what
way,
you're,
yeah.
I guess you're saying to
Yeah.
me, right?
Yes,
I'm sorry for the dialogue, Madam Chair. I just have some definitive questions about
Absolutely.
where we're going with this company. That's all I have on that company for now. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Madam Chair, on the ongoing CPAC, has that been resolved? I heard and had a few emails from some disgruntled parents. Has our CPAC been dissolved here?
Our CPAC has been partnered with Auburn, and the reason for that is many districts face the same problem that we had in terms of participation of parents, and have partnered together to pull their resources together. Districts, I think the state encourages that kind of districting. I had, over the 2 years prior to that, put out notices, tried to get people in. I decided this year, along with other districts who are faced with the same thing, that being, parents willing to be involved, to partner together so that we could try to form a group that would benefit both districts. And Auburn was close enough, and so that's where we're moving.
But under the state statute, is that, I'm sorry, may I?
Go ahead, yep, continue the conversation, please.
Under the statute and under the situation, is that legal without the vote of the CPAC organization? You're saying we couldn't get enough of our own people to be their own CPAC, to monitor their own situation here in Oxford?
I'm not sure what you're asking me. Is it legal
Was that legal
we're-
to consolidate without the vote of, have you technically
Well,
disbanded
we
Oxford
haven't,
CPAC?
no, we have not technically disbanded anything. The first meeting that we had of the two, I mean, it was, we're beginning to try to get them together to see if they want to establish bylaws, if we want to.
As a joint CPAC?
As a joint CPAC. However, our first meeting, we had 0 Oxford participation, and our second meeting, we had 1, who was very interested in doing something together. And so we're kind of working on a presentation for the next CPAC meeting to see if we can draw more families in from both
I
districts.
think the reason I'm asking these questions, Ms. Baker, you understand I go to the source, and I want the public to hear this, not just from me. I want them to hear it from you. You're saying we had no interested Oxford participants, so you had to consolidate, in other words.
Last year, we had a group of parents. It was co-chaired by 2 parents who decided at the beginning of this year that they weren't going to chair it. We didn't disband Oxford, but we moved forward with partnering with another district, which I believe is legal and under the state regulations.
I'm asking you how you did it, to satisfy my interest if it is legal or isn't, and if our parents are being accommodated. Okay? Thank you, Madam Chair.
I've not received any phone calls from any parents about it.
I have some further questions, but I will put them to you in writing, Mr. Superintendent and Mrs. Baker, because technically, this is nice, Mrs. Baker, but for me, a numbers cruncher, this is generic. It just tells me roughly what you're doing. I have some specific questions economically and financially that I will
Okay.
forward to you.
Absolutely.
All right,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you. Ms. Coombs, would you
I'm all
have
set.
anything? I just have a couple questions for you, Ms. Baker, a few things, and I know I had spoken with you. Can you just let us know, just so we get a handle on what's going on, because obviously, all departments, we need to know, financially how we're doing, because we know things are not going to be pleasant the next few years. In the last 2 years, obviously, we know there's been a reduction in staff, but how much staff
Thank you.
have you lost in the last 2 years here?
In the last 2
your-
years, therapy staff, we have eliminated a physical therapy assistant, a certified occupational therapy assistant, and one speech and language pathologist that resigned, and we didn't fill that position. And that was a savings of $120,000.
Oh, she provided no services.
Yep. That was 120,000 we estimated yearly that we save.
Approximately.
Now, with those positions eliminated, does this become under the health corps, future health corps? Does this become their domain now? Do they service these people that we've taken them off? Are we taking them off because they were excess to us? Because I know we've also hired, other people have come in, like subcontractors.
Right now, the occupational therapy staff and the speech staff are managing the caseload.
Okay.
There haven't been, I think through our entry and exit criteria and looking at caseloads and schedules, that there has not been any disruption in services for speech and language and occupational therapy. With physical therapy, as we are moving towards an understanding of the school-based model, yes, Futures, one of the ways they're helping us through their contract this year is to provide some additional services until that caseload becomes more manageable.
It'll become more manageable once we get children off IEPs. Is that a goal? I mean, I know Future's
No, it's
goal
not-
was to
it's
celebrate
not-
exit.
It's not get children off of IEPs. It's to look
they
at the
don't meet those
educational relevance of the therapies that they're getting
Mm-hmm.
and use the entry and exit criteria that we've established to objectively assess that
Perfect.
relative to the school environment.
And how many consultants, I know Mr. Peterson mentioned it, in the last few years, we've had a few, not just Future Corps.
Mm-hmm.
How many consultants have we brought in?
We brought in
we have-
Mary Skinner, who was
Yeah.
a speech and language pathologist, also through grants, who provided an overview of our autistic population because of her years of experience
Not
and
just
expertise.
speech, though. She did the whole, did
She
she do
did-
behavioral too?
I'm sorry?
Did she do behavioral
No.
too? The
Well, I mean, some of it gets
Mm-hmm.
incorporated in, but no, that was
I know,
more
really.
geared towards
Yep.
the communication and using a model of pictures and, to help staff communicate with these children and increase their communication and make things more functional for
Right.
them.
So she did a consult with us on our autism
Yes.
group. So we did her. Did we do others?
Behaviorist.
A behaviorist came in?
Yes, we had a behaviorist also that year, later in the year and into the following year. And we have a behaviorist this year, all paid through grants. And, let me just add an editorial here about the grants. And, when the state provides these special education improvement grants is to help us look at ways to improve the delivery of services. And then it's, consultation and bringing people in to help train our staff is one of the key areas within these grants.
Let's see. I will get to you in a minute. How many children now do you service on a direct service? How many children?
Are you talking about therapy services?
Let's say therapy services.
Okay, out of the, this year,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about? Out of the 308 students that we have, We have 144 receiving speech and language therapy. We have 105 receiving occupational therapy. And we have 45 receiving physical therapy. And that number was down. We've had a number of discharges this year. So that number came down. We started the year with 51.
144, 105, and 45. Are your therapist or your department still responsible, I thought, for APE in our schools? I think over the years,
We
we've always
have-
had,
If-
the OT
if-
and PT were always involved in the APE program.
Well, APE is different
Yeah.
than OT and PT.
Right,
So if there were students.
as a consultant to our teachers.
But an APE is not a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. It's a physical education
Right.
teacher who's trained in accommodating and adapting the curriculum.
So you no longer have anything to do with any of that?
There has never
that's the
been
teach-
any APA involvement since I've been in the district. There have not been any students identified as having APE in their IEP. That's not to say if there were students that needed, and it was determined that they needed adaptive PE, that, under my watch, I would look to bring someone in to provide that.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Peterson?
I'm sorry, I have to back up to Futures or whoever, and this to Mr. Himmelberger or you, Ms. Baker, whoever can answer it. How are we recovering our Medicaid funds? Are we doing the paperwork ourselves? Is someone doing it and billing us third party?
Town does. Mr. Himmelberger, please?
I will attempt to answer that, Mr. Peterson, and I'm sure Mr. Matthew will correct me. The district does recover Medicaid reimbursement. It's a rather complicated program and a very complex system which requires a tremendous amount of time and resources from the district's point of view to recover, while not an insignificant amount of money, certainly it's sometimes most districts complain it doesn't really pay back all of the time and effort that we do. However, it's our fiduciary responsibility to recover and make sure that we get reimbursed for all that we have coming to us. There are currently two different pieces of that Medicaid reimbursement. There's a direct service claims, and there is an administrative activity claim. And Mrs. Baker and her staff do an outstanding job on the direct service claim, and that has run probably somewhere around $100,000 the last couple of years. And the business office, with Mr. Matthew now, does the recovery on the administrative activity claims. And most districts do require a third party to actually do the filing, because that's how complex it is. The state has, as you probably know, Mr. Peterson, has a few hoops for us to jump through on the recovery of Medicaid reimbursement for public schools. And so we do engage a third party, UMass Medical, which I believe has about 90 districts in the Commonwealth, and we pay, I believe it's 4.25% on the amount recovered, which is as low as I have seen from any one of the third-party providers. And the funds do go to the town's general fund, but I believe the town, and I'll put a plug in here, has been very fair and certainly given us credit, if you will, for doing the work to recover those funds when it does come to budget time.
Mr. Peterson?
I just wanted to make sure that we were proceeding still along those lines, because I was on the board when we got in trouble. About 3 years in a row, it cost us more administratively to recover the funds. So we ceased doing it for 2 years, and the former town manager sent us legal notification to sue us if we did not continue to recover the funds, all right?
Right. As I recall, when I got here, that was the time period I think you're referring to, and we were exactly 2 years behind in going after that reimbursement. And at the time, you had a 24-month look back, so one of my first to-dos was to immediately get caught up, and we have done that and have since now been current since 2005, 2006 with our reimbursements.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Himmelberger, and I'm glad to see that we're still using UMass in our own 2 internal services, because the IG frowns upon other situations that are not certified by them for billing us back. Okay, so thank you.
Okay. Well, Mrs. Baker, I thank you for coming in and giving us an update in the special education. I'm sure you'll keep us posted with different things that come up,
Absolutely.
and we would love to hear them, and we are, take all your information under advisement. Thank you.
Mrs. Baker.
Very much.
Next on our agenda is a school choice discussion, and I've asked Mr. Himmelberger to keep us informed of all the information that he is gathering for school choice. It is not to be put to vote. It is simply to have the information given to us at this time. I will let you know that I probably will be calling for the vote in January for whichever reason we decide, because if we don't want to do it, I think we can tell people ahead of time, and if we want to, we can tell them that too. But we will put it to bed in January. But at this time, I will have Mr. Himmelberg give us some more information, and it will be open if you have any other questions for him to research for you. Mr. Himmelberger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you recall, in years gone by, we were always under the impression that we could not be a choice district because that we did charge substantially separate programs, tuitions under our special ed as well as Project Coffee. We did some research and found that not to be the case, and that we are indeed eligible if the committee so chooses. And you had tasked me with looking at going to the administrative council to see what the thoughts would be regarding numbers, because as we know, the school committee can set the number of seats per grade each year. And so at a prior admin council meeting, the feedback was unanimous that certainly for the first year, we would not recommend any seats in K through 8. Primarily due to the fact that our buildings and our resources are stretched pretty good right now. So I think that certainly it doesn't make sense to entertain those grades, that grade span at this time, especially when once a student is accepted into a district's choice-in program, that student is required to be allowed to complete his or her schooling, so that you would have to offer a seat to him or her all the way through to graduation. However, in grades 9 through 12, the administrative council and certainly Mr. Wells felt strongly that because of our space available at the high school and because of the input from guidance and from faculty, that we did have the ability to accept students in those grades. The preliminary recommendation was up to 7 students in grades 9, 10, 11, and 5 students for grades 12. Certainly, the 12th and final grade may not be as anticipated because it's the final year, and so most students would already be in a district or in a school where they are working towards completion. But that was the preliminary thought from the administrative team. Certainly it was not done casually, and it was deliberated quite thoroughly. And I think for the initial thoughts back to the school committee, the team did feel strongly that if the committee did want to entertain school choice, that it should be for grades 9 through 12 initially.
I have one question. Up to 7 does not matter to the administrative council, Mr. Wells, if it's 9, 10, or 11? It's whichever grade, they can.
No, that was 7 per grade.
Seven
Se-
per,
So
okay.
7 in, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I didn't make that clear. 7 in grade 9, 7 for grade 10, 7 for grade 11, and then 5 seats for grades 12. So that would be, and again, that's up to the committee whether they want to be in that range or, you know, it's certainly the committee's choice.
Can I ask, just a general question? How much money do we spend out for tuitioned out?
You mean for students in Oxford who
Right.
choice out to other
Yes.
districts? I might-
Approximately, I know, put you on the
Yeah,
seat.
I'm looking to Mr. Matthew. I think it's approximately 250,000.
Somewhere in there.
We can get that off of the recap sheet.
That's how much total.
That's what yes, that's because the money does follow the student.
Right.
And as long as a district was willing to take in the students, and it's currently assessed at about $5,200 per student. And so conversely, if we did allow students to choice in, roughly $5,200 per student would flow into the town.
Mr. Peterson?
That does not include charter schools, right? That's
Correct.
just simply choice
You-
schools to Northbridge or wherever as an
Exactly.
example.
Charter, again, I'm going to look to Mr. Matthew.
We had
to-
a figure of over 600,000 for private school, charter school, choice, all combined, I believe.
Correct, correct.
As I recall, the charter number was very close to the choice out number.
Right,
So about
right.
250
So
to
about
about
500,000
250.
between the two at
Yep.
this point, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So to me, that's still choice out. It's charter that we're losing money that comes off the top that goes to that charter school. So it doesn't come off us directly, but
But the choice is 250.
the choice is, yes.
Yes,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Certainly, and I'm going to agree with Mr. Peterson, and as most of us that follow goings-on in Boston, the ed reform bill is being debated after the first of the year, and obviously charter is one of the key
I'll be there.
components, and I think the feeling is pretty unanimous amongst public school districts that the way the state has funded charter schools has certainly left a lot to be desired, and that's my opinion and mine only, because it puts the districts at a very uneven playing field. And so hopefully there'll be some movement with regards to the ed reform bill being debated in the spring. That remains to be seen. My money's on Mr. Peterson to help get that where it should
Think I'm
be.
wound up tonight, gentlemen.
Mrs. Coonan?
Mr. Himmelberger, how exactly does the choice in happen? I mean, is it an application process? Do we accept the first 7 students for that grade
Yep.
that apply, or?
It's a rather lengthy process, and on the, I believe I had copies way back in the beginning of the year, and it's about an 8-page essay from the ESE website in terms of the process for it. But simply, once the school committee sets the number of seats, if there, hypothetically, we set 3 seats in grade 9, if 2 students apply, then they meet the requirements of the building, then they are accepted. If 4 students apply, it has to be a lottery, and it's strictly drawn out of a hat
Okay.
for any numbers that exceed the seated requirements.
Thank you.
Mr. Himmelberger, I don't know if you have this information, or maybe you can get it for us. You said the process, as Mrs. Coonan just asked, is there any requirements to choicing into a school district? Are there requirements that we set as a school committee, like good standing or anything like that, or requirements that maybe our 9th grade have already had to pass? Are those requirements that they too would have to meet, or is there anything like that we would have to look at?
I believe it would simply be that the students would have to be on track to enter the grade that they're coming into. So, for instance, if they were coming into grade 10, they would have already had to have had their 1 year of English, 1 year of history, and so that they would be on target to move through our system, which basically is what the school committee approves every year, so that would be the only requirements that they would be able to meet the standards that we have in place
Academically.
towards graduation.
Mr. Peterson?
Because we are a public school and the way the courses are set up here, and I had spoken with Mr. Wells and Mr. Himmelberger earlier on this when we requested to get the information out there, because obviously, you know, I'm a proponent of it. We had to have room in our math, our English, our history classes for those 7 students in all 3 of those grades, as an example. I mean, if they're taking their math in 9th grade, they may not have to take one in 10th grade or something of that nature, but they have to have room for them in English or science or whatever that they have to be able to fulfill to get their full requirements like our students going through here. So every discipline had to have some room in order to put these students in, as an example. Okay? So you had to have room in English, math, science, your major disciplines for all 7 students, all 3 years, when they compile these figures, and they can report that to you when you are ready to have some other information proposed to you by the high school at this rate. And looking at it myself, yeah, I tend to agree with them. K through 8, we really don't have room for it. It's here at the high school that we could recover half of our tuition out at this point in time, anyway.
Any other questions to Mr. Himmelberger?
Just one last point of information, and this comes courtesy of Mr. Wells. He included in the packets this evening the 8th grade transition night that was staged last week, 2 weeks, Thursday, December 3rd. And I think it was well received. And as you can see, the amount of work that Mr. Wells and Mr. Nugent and the staff here at Oxford High School have put in to this, and I think it dovetails very well with the choice discussion because of all of the, I mean, I don't think we've ever had this kind of a compiling of data that really showcases what we offer here at Oxford High School, and certainly would be very, I think, compelling for someone that was looking at taking advantage of all that we have to offer here. So the packets that Mr. Wells put together, I think, speak very well towards this whole discussion on choice.
Mr. Peterson?
I'll go off track if I may, because this was one of my, as a school committee.
Can I, if you're going to do the 8th grade, can you just hold for 1 minute and I'll let you talk about that
Yep, go ahead.
transition night? Just so, any other questions? I just want to thank the committee and ask that the full committee take the time in this next month to meet with Central Office, Mr. Himmelberger, and if you have any other questions on this, because I do want to address it. I think we've all voted on this over the years, and we have not had all this information that you have diligently got, and I'm thrilled that the Administrative Council has weighed in on it. I don't think in years past we've been able to bring them into the discussion too, so this is a discussion, and we can make a well-informed decision for each one of us as we go forward. So I just want to thank you and thank the administration for that information. So none being, we'll just rest that, and now you may talk about that for a moment.
On that also,
Yep.
Madam Chair, you know that I've been asking and looking for this information for some time, and I really want to thank the administration and all that they did do to provide the factual information in writing and verbally and get their figures so that we have a true understanding of just saying, hey, we don't have the room for it, or whatever. I really want to thank you for doing this, Mr. Himmelberger, and your staff, all right?
Thank you.
And just to follow through with that, with the Oxford night, I was very impressed. I've attended both of them. Mr. Spitz was there also. I have never heard for some time so much enthusiasm for Oxford's school system as I heard that night. It was amazing that everyone on that stage, and yes, they were administrators and toting their own horn for band, for athletics, or whatever, but their main message to the public and to our constituents was to stay in Oxford. We have a lot to offer, and that's the bottom line. They hammered that theme all night. We don't have to go elsewhere. You can get what you need here, work with us. And I really want to acknowledge that publicly and thank them that this is what you, Madam Chair, and I have been saying for a long time, we don't have enough of our own PR, and they started right there that night with the parents of that 8th grade class to keep them here in the Oxford school system. And I would like to thank the high school administration for that, and hopefully we can filter it on down the line.
I'll agree. I did not attend. I let the children just be children that night, but
It
I
was
did hear, I
amazing.
think, Nikki, you were there. and-
Went very well.
And you had lots of students there doing PR work for us, too. The
Right.
cafeteria was filled with clubs and activities, and I think it was a really wonderful night for everybody, so.
I can't thank them enough.
Yeah,
It was phenomenal.
great, right from everywhere, so thank you. All right, thank you. I am going to jump and have our student rep so she can get out of here and give us her information, please.
All right, well, winter sports are underway. We have a girls' basketball game going on right now, and I believe the winter sports schedule is on the OXPS website under the Oxford High School page. This Wednesday coming up is Santa's Workshop, where we get elementary kids from Clare Bar and Ann Chafee to come here, and we set up crafts, games, milk and cookies. There's a movie going on, and we just hang out with them and get them excited for Christmas, and it's a good time for parents to go Christmas shopping. So we're going, student council members are actually going to the elementary schools tomorrow during their lunches to promote this and get them to come. So that's a good event coming up. For NHS, we have Secret Santa, where one member in NHS every member is assigned one teacher, and they get them 3 small gifts throughout this week, and each gift has a clue on it, and you're to get them to think of who you are, and then you reveal yourself on Friday, and you switch gifts with them, and it's really fun. And for Best Buddies, next Tuesday is our Christmas party after school until 3:30, which, good time. That's it.
Well, it's that time of year.
I know.
Thank you, Nikki. All right. Our next thing, I do have one thing from subcommittee, and it's going to be on a policy. If I can grab this right here to pass out. Something that just came up was an inclement weather policy. I know we have snow days and such, but we were looking through in the event that school needs to be canceled, and I know our superintendent is very careful on when to cancel and when not to, and doesn't want the days that he has to cancel in the morning and then by noontime be an absolutely gorgeous day, and we've had that happen. And what we were looking through our policy manual, and we did not address it. I think it's been verbally thought of as the policy, but there's nothing in writing. And I'm presenting tonight a possible policy for us. It's the inclement weather policy, and it reads, in the event of the school day being canceled in the town of Oxford due to inclement weather, the decision whether to hold, postpone, or cancel any previous scheduled school-sponsored event shall be made by the school's principal, A, in conjunction with the athletic director regarding athletic events, or B, in conjunction with the faculty member in charge of a specific schedule event. I would ask for your pleasure from the board on this policy. I am at your discretion of how you feel. If you feel that it's something that you want to have as a first reading and waive the second and create as policy. Unfortunately, we're kind of moving a little fast just because the weather's here on us, and we don't meet again till the middle of January. So I'd like to address either way. Questions, concern, comments? I'm looking back and forth. Mr. Peterson.
Well, I hate to be the one all the time, but we're going the other direction, I think, with this, the way it's written, being too permissive. I don't know how to do this at this point in time. I might be inclined to agree to go along with you at this for a temporary policy to draft a permanent one for the future so that we don't have any problems through the holiday season. But quite frankly, I don't agree with leaving it under these terms with just the principal or the athletic director. Quite frankly, I had a long discussion at convention with the MIAA, and I'm sure they don't like me anymore either, but you know how that goes. They set all kinds of rules and regulations and policies, but don't have any teeth or backbone to defend them or come down to help us. They let us, whenever there's a problem, they throw it back to us and let us swing with it, so we're the ones that take the rap. They have a policy as far as athletic events are concerned, which is not included in this. We had, I guess, and I guess I'm remiss, that should have been in writing, that we had a verbal policy or some sort of agreement that when school was closed, things were canceled. And I understand what you're saying tonight, Madam Chair, about some problems economically or canceling or forfeiting an event, which is not the case totally, and I don't want that construed that just because we cancel an event, we would forfeit an athletic event. That is determined by both participating schools under MIAA rules. So as far as if we're the initiator of it and the other school agrees to it, you do not forfeit. In the winter months, it's hard to make up things, I understand that. That's athletic end of it. I understand we had a concert and I'm well aware that we had a Christmas concert canceled last year, and the kids practiced forever, and it really was disappointing, and they were disenchanted for having to work so hard not be able to find a date to have that concert. It finally did go off, but everybody's spirits weren't quite the same, and I shouldn't say that negatively, because they did
Yeah,
a
I know.
fantastic
They did.
job. So I do have problems just going with a one-sentence blanking it, leaving it to the principal of that school, who is not consulted throughout the day probably with anyone, as far as the highway department, the superintendent, or the police department, as far as really inclement weather. And it's a chance anytime, like Mr. Himmelberger says, the other day, he canceled school and he prayed like hell that it didn't get to 70 degrees by 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they could have stayed here, all right? But that's the chance you take when you cancel anything. And sometimes you're the hero, sometimes you're not, all right? I would be willing to go along with this, Madam Chair, on a temporary basis till we can construct a more definitive, permanent policy to put in our book then at that case, because that has been our ongoing agenda to get these policies updated and in the system for whoever sits here on the committee, right? Is my opinion at this point in time.
Thank you. Mr. Himmelberger, you want to address that, or?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a real quick background here. This came about from our athletic director, Mr. Doldorian, who really only had a specific sport in mind, and that was indoor track, which takes place during inclement weather. And the meets are held only at Northbridge or Tantascwa, and it's all 13 Southern Worcester County League schools that do attend. Hypothetically, it could happen that Northbridge has school and maybe all of the districts, east of us are there. If we did cancel school, it would be highly unlikely the meet would be called. So I think the athletic director was really looking out for the best interests of the athletes and the students, so that we wouldn't, punish them for the fact that we were not in school, primarily around indoor track. Although you're correct, it could fall around a band concert or another competition, which is, I think, why the wording. But it was specifically for indoor track, which didn't have the flexibility to reschedule, because both Northbridge and Tantascwa's gyms are flat out with wrestling and basketball and everything else. So it was really brought to our attention from Coach D around the fact that indoor track would be the one sport most affected.
And I do agree. I know I spoke today earlier with Mr. Himmelberger and through email to Mr. Coach Doldorian. It is something that we just didn't have in writing, and we looked through all our policies, and it just wasn't there. So that's what we are doing. I don't have a problem doing something and then making sure we look at it and have the time that I know our policy review committee always likes to have the time to look and compare. I agree to present it tonight. I'm not one that presents things on the fly. Don't like it, don't like it, don't like it. But I also know we're not going to meet till January 11th, and if anything's going to happen, of course it's going to happen between now and the 11th, and that's the season of track, and that's other things coming up. So that's why I was like, can we put something to at least give them? And I think and I believe that we do have, in this case, we have Mr. Himmelberger and Mr. Wells who would do diligent, would not send our children out into the snowbankings or something. So I wouldn't have any trouble supporting it, so that would give them, I trust them. And I have to trust them because I can't be everywhere at the same time. Mr. Peterson?
I agree with you, and frankly, Mr. Wells and Mr. Doldorian chirped the loudest supporting and staying in Oxford and participating here and not going somewhere else just to be able to play sports. But unfortunately, I don't want to use names, but it was Mr. Doldorian that we had to defend back then because he had some practices right after, quote, after school at 4 o'clock on a day that school had been canceled, et cetera. And we took the wrath from the parents at that time, that particular board that I sat on. This is a different board, different time.
Different principal.
And they're doing everything in their power to build this system. I do not want to go against them per se on this particular item solely on athletics. But
No.
again, and you know what, I'm really surprised because, quite frankly, my daughter coached the track situation, and the way they've moved it from Northbridge from South High, it does is more of a precarious situation than it was when everything was held at North High on Saturday. So things have changed, I understand that, I'm willing to roll with the change. So again, I would, and probably this is gonna get us through the year anyway, because most things happen now through January, and after
That's-
that,
yeah.
sports slow down until spring. So,
Well, with that said, Ms. Peters, do I have a motion to accept as first reading, waive the second, and adopt as policy?
I will do that on a 90-day situation to give us time to develop a permanent policy. That will cover you for January, February, and March at this point in time, or December through March. And by that time, you should be out of the inclement weather.
About 120, just to be sure.
All right, I'll agree, I'll go along, I agree with you, I'll go 120, fine.
I was going to
Okay.
say, would you like to do it to the end of the year so that the handbooks we can change if we need to? We can just.
Well, no, because your handbooks are gonna start to be
Start
drafted,
May.
starting April, May, and June.
Would you count the 120 days? Because I'm going to have to put it on some calendar, someone's going to remember. But I can do
You've
120.
only got a week till Christmas, and yet there's some
180 days in
games, all
school, it
right?
must be to the end.
You've only got, I will go
20
from
April-
January
April
1st to
vacation.
120
April
days.
vacation, okay.
right?
It's got to be, yeah.
I'll
120 days,
I'll agree to
approximately
go
April
from
vacation.
January 1st
Okay.
and 120 days ensuing.
Okay.
That gives you these
That
2 weeks
definitely
to
gets
play
us
with,
through.
whatever happens,
Yep.
happens. And
And
you're
we
into
will-
the Christmas vacation in 2 weeks anyway, so.
Okay.
And
So I
then
have a
re- And then
motion?
revisit.
Yeah, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Call for the vote.
yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
And I will vote yes, 3 affirmative, 2 absent, and we will revisit this through the Policy Review Committee in 120 days. Thank you. Mr. Himmelberger, if you would let Mr. Wells know, and Mr. Veldorian, and anybody else at the high school
This
who is
is,
in.
again, no reflection against them.
Absolutely, I
think they're
understand that.
doing a fine job, and
And I
want-
appreciate the fact
want
that
to
they brought it
continue
up to
that.
us, and we couldn't find it, so.
Thank you.
This time, Superintendent of Schools, please. Mr. Himmelberger?
I feel like I've been speaking an awful lot this evening, so I'll make my report very brief. I want to say thanks to all. We survived the first snow day, and the technology was very good, and my thanks to all of the guys at the DPW who do a terrific job. There was about 18 or 20 folks whose phone number we did not have in the system, and we are alerting those, and those folks are getting in touch with Melissa so that we'll fill in those blanks, and then we'll have a system that will call everyone just once. And it was really quite streamlined because I had called her at 5 a.m. My phone rang at 5:06, and it was on TV at 5:07. So that's pretty darn quick. My plan would be for any delays or cancellations to make the decision around 5 so that by 5:30 everyone does know. And it would be on the TV stations, the radio stations that are up on the website, as well as the website, so that everyone will definitely be able to access the information. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Had a couple good years, Bath by fire.
Mr. Himmelberger, please feel free to announce who you are when you made those phone calls. Did you just, is this the Oxford school system? I knew your voice, but a lot of people said to me, was that Mr. Himmelberger? And I said, I'll have to remind
To
him.
check that recording. I thought I had the other one
I think we've got to
on.
give you a script, huh?
The Oxford Public
This
Schools
is the Oxford Public Schools, I'm
O'clock in the
thinking.
morning,
Yeah.
you're lucky you know your name.
It was very nice. Thank you very much. Mr. Matthew, do you have anything for us tonight?
I do have one piece of business for the committee, and I apologize for not being able to get this into the school committee packets that were available on Thursday. We did open proposals last week for the purchase of a 2009-2010 handicap accessible van, as approved at the special town meeting towards the end of October. There were 7 proposals requested and sent out. We received back 6 proposals, and based on those responses, the lowest responsible bidder was Mobility Works by about $1,000, $999 lower than the other. So based on the responses, I asked that the school committee allow us to accept this proposal based on successful completion of references.
So moved.
Second, call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, 3 affirmative, 2 absent. We're all set with that.
Thank you very much. And the only other thing I'll say is mark your calendars for January 25th, because we'll talk fun budget stuff.
January 20th.
jeez.
Takes care of one, Laura. Just one off my list.
That will be your day then, huh?
Fun.
She's sweating my list tonight. She thought it'd be a short meeting.
I know. All right. Mrs. Coonan?
Just a couple things. Although I was unable to make the 8th grade transition, I did have a student that helped out with that, and a lot of great comments. The book and the little brochure pamphlet that was done, I think is excellent. And I definitely think that, you know, we're on our way to kind of toting our own horn. So I think that that was a great thing. Also, just one final thing, Merry Christmas to all. Safe and happy holiday. And enjoy.
Coming. Ms. Peterson?
Seeing as this is our last meeting for probably a month, again, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah to everybody. But I do have some things I want to run through briefly. Mr. Himmelberger can write them down, and he'll have another 30 days at this point to get back to us to finalize some of this, all right? Seeing as it's been 30 days on some of it, sir.
Okay.
Softball field. If you want to comment tonight, fine. If not, where do we stand? I know unfortunately it snowed and we have inclement weather, but I understand that we were pretty close to proceeding.
Actually, the vendor has indicated that they're still able to work.
To do it?
Yep, so we're on track.
track,
The
okay.
call should have been made today.
Thank you. The posts and gates that I spoke with both of you on, replacing or doing what we had in the past, that we probably, cement work, I don't know if it can be cured without heat now, so that may have to wait till spring. Where do we stand on that? Any discussion or any?
Ms. Himmelberger?
I guess I'll take that one, Mr. Peterson. I
Just toss it
believe,
that
I
way.
believe the only thing it would take would be if the three of us could survey the area in daylight.
I have my miner's lamp.
That's what I was afraid of.
Blew me off the other night in the dark, all
I'll
right?
keep them, yeah.
All right.
We can definitely.
So we can get
proceed.
together on that, thank you.
Absolutely.
Still proceed, thank you. I will make myself available during daylight hours, but not at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you.
It looks like they resolved one, but one is still flashing, Claire Barton School. The speed sign is still flashing out there. Not resolved, and I just came by there on the way in. It's going, and it was going Sunday still. Please. I know it's only $8 a month, but, you know, $50 is a book somewhere that we can buy for someone that still we're paying the bill. They're archaic. I think they could come down personally, but, okay, that one's first. I have some correspondence from a couple of parents I've spoken with the chair about. Mrs. Coonan, I'm sorry I wasn't able to speak to you. And I have not had time to call Mrs. Scalaro. We had this problem last year, and we're back in the same scenario. By the time the fourth grade lunch gets to lunch, they're out of pizza and milk consistently in the last 2-3 weeks, twice in 1 week alone. Something of that nature, and I'm not going to chastise the food program because she's doing a fantastic job, brought us back into balance and nutrition, everything else. But milk and pizza keep. And milk can be returned on a following day if it isn't used, but where we're offering breakfast now, my personal opinion is we should never run out of milk, period. And I would like that checked on and just taken care of, please.
Ms. Himmelberger?
Absolutely. I think if, you know, this is the first that Mr. Matthew and I are hearing about that. So if anyone does have that feedback, please just have them, or I address everyone, please just call the central office and we can remedy that very quickly.
That's simply the only reason I brought it up tonight publicly, so I can get to the whole town and not just the people that keep calling me, all right? I want everybody to know if we have a problem, to notify you or Mrs. Scalaro. I don't mind taking the calls, but I think we're doing a fine job in trying to work a food program exceptionally well. Is the only reason I bring it up, and not, again, to pick on Mrs. Scalaro or you, but so that the public hears it one time and not, I don't have to make 100 phone calls. Thank you.
Anything else? That's it?
No, I have, I spoke to you also, Madam Chair, and we don't have a specific policy, I don't believe. I think you reiterated that, but you tried to establish something. We're having problems at the middle school dances. Again, I've had phone calls and communications. Our policy here in town is to allow our own organizations to use it because that was part of the agreement when we got this new high school. Our buildings refurbished, that we would have community centers, and our local groups would have access to using it for dances, et cetera, simply just paying for the custodian or police or whatever. 2 weeks ago, apparently, we did have a problem, which I don't believe was reported again to you. It was one of our own internal organizations, did have a police officer there, but Madam Chair implemented a policy when she was on the Booster Club, and everybody's basically sort of following it, but now kind of circumventing it, that you have to fill out a form to be able to come to the dance. Those forms normally were done in advance. Now they're accepting them at the door, and how do we know who this kid is or anybody else? We are now having, originally the dances were set up at the middle school for 7th and 8th grade only. Because when we realigned and it became 5th through 8th grade, we had to adjust and allow the 5th and 6th grade, because we had a tremendous pressure from the public to allow those students to attend the dances with their peers that they went to school with. We are now having 4th graders attending these dances. We need to, Madam Chair, and I would put it on your agenda for me, if you would please, to draft a formal official policy for that particular building. If we can't implement it, or they can't do it themselves, I think it's time we need to do it. This is the 2nd year in a row we've had these problems, or 3rd year, if not more. No 4th grade student, I'm sorry, and I'll take the wrath, you can call me all you want, belongs at a dance. They belong home and in bed or doing their studies, okay, even if it's a Friday night. They don't belong at a middle school dance.
I think they don't allow, technically, they don't allow 5th graders either.
Right,
so
but
it's
that's
what
my
they say, 7th
opinion,
grade.
and I'm stodgy and
They do s-
old-fashioned, I guess,
no,
but
they
I'm
do
sorry.
sneak in.
I will not bend as one member here to start allowing that age group or younger to attend these dances. Too much can happen. I think you should be concerned about your own child going to the dance. Who knows? Anybody could take it at that age group. They're too young and too vulnerable to be attending something of that nature. So I would like that, Madam Chair. And again, this is first of your knowledge, Mr. Himmelberger, I understand, but I think this is more of a committee's situation. It is a building, and again, the principals allow and have the right to accept the applications for the usage of their building and then forward them to you to the central office. There was a police officer there that night, there was a fracas, and he did close the dance down. I applaud him for that. And that's the reason I got the call, because their kid had paid and had, you know, they were Christmas shopping and they didn't want to come home 2 hours early to pick the child up. Well, I'm sorry, it's your child, it's your safety. Come home and pick it up when we close the dance, okay? So that's the scenario of those type dances happening right now.
We can look into it.
You looked like you had some comment? No.
No, I was just going to say, if the school committee will
We'll work
give us the
on
policy,
something.
then we will make sure it's enforced.
Again, the administration doesn't know it. The dance transpires. It was shut down accordingly and properly. All things were fine. Everybody got home safely. But again, a couple of the parents asked me why we don't monitor these things, because that particular dance was ours internally. We can control. If we continue to have problems with outside organizations that are local Oxford nonprofits that are allowed to use the building, we don't let anybody else come in without charging or paying or knowing what's going on. But our own organizations, if it's a community group and they cannot seem to control things, we do not have to, and the principal does not have to accept an application for them for future use. That is a policy right now, but I would like to tighten up the dance structure and when and how things and who's absolutely allowed at these dances or not.
I'm going to recognize Mrs. Coonan.
Mr. Peterson, can I just ask you a question? I was unaware of this, so I'm just trying to.
No, I'm sorry, but
That's okay.
these are things that we're not meeting, and I don't have time.
I guess a question
Call you.
that I have is, this wasn't a school dance?
Yes,
school
it was. It was a school organization dance
school-sponsored
this time.
dance.
Well, a school organization-sponsored dance this time.
For fundraising.
It was a fundraiser.
Okay.
So it was an
Inside.
extracurricular event, not, well, any dances are extracurricular events anyway,
Right.
okay? But it was one of our own this
From an Oxford
particular
school
time,
nonprofit.
yes. But it's happened 3 weeks in a row, I would have to get a list of the dances that fourth graders have been allowed to attend that simply by handing us a piece of paper, signing in, okay?
I'll just, for further information, I know what you're talking about. I would just add to that, I know what you're talking about. A few years back, what we ended up doing, we did have the same problem. We had a nonprofit organization that came in, obviously for fundraiser, to do a school dance. It was chaos. And it was suggested, shut down all dances. But it does serve a purpose, and the kids do have fun, and it certainly is a great fundraiser for teams. And we'll find most of our teams or even classes go over and have a dance and make money, yeah. And that's, something that certainly goes on. What the Booster Club had done several years ago, we knew of this, and what we had done is done a permission slip. The flyer was only available through school, so obviously you only got the permission slip if you were in school, and they only gave them to grades 6, 7, and 8. That permission slip had to come with you to the dance. If you didn't have the permission slip, goodbye, get back in your car, and that was it. Therefore, we knew only our Oxford students were going, and only 6th was going, only 7th and 8th graders were going. I think what's happened over time is different people did use that. Operation Graduation used it, and we found it, not only that, as we also had a phone number there in case of an emergency. If something happens to your child, at least we had the permission slips to kind of look through and look for Bobby Smith and call. With that, we also knew the parents knew what time it was, what they had to do, so the rules were all met. Over the years, I think in the last few years, I know people who have had dances have said, well, 5 children showed up and they didn't have permission slips, so I gave them a piece of paper and said, just sign it. That kind of defeats that clause, and I think what they think is, hey, I got a permission slip, but the permission slip also proved that we could do that. So maybe that's something we can look into, supply them with some type of permission slip that obviously is only going to go out to the children in our grades. They can't get it. That night, if you don't have it, then you don't have it. I know there's been talk previously about using their IDs, too, to get in, because then you could look, because a lot of times, I will tell you, a lot of parents sign permission slips of their 5th graders and say they're in grade 7. Not nice, but they do, and we find them. So you can only do so much, so. Mr. Peterson?
I agree with you. But there's other problems, too, that we had addressed earlier years ago, which have kind of gone by the wayside again, no written policy. If you were sick, you weren't allowed to attend extracurricular activities, okay? Unfortunately, coming to a dance
Isn't really.
on Friday night, the week's over with, you don't know if they were sick or
Yep.
not, and can't check until Monday morning. So that is kind of but we also softened up. There are no administrators at any of these dances anymore, except for at the high school level. Middle school level, if it's my organization, I'm the
Charge.
supervisor with how many of our parental chaperones I can round up or whatever. So we really are not there as part of the system at the dance, at the middle school level, like we are at the high school, where a teacher sponsors it, or the principal's at the prom, or this type of thing. At the middle school, these dances are, whoever the group is, there's a lead person, and they have their own chaperone, so we have no control over really, and that's what I tried to explain to a couple of the parents. We don't have any control over the immediate function, but our control as a policy organization is who can use it and how, and if they're not complying, they can't, and we can shut off their usage, but in between, we have no control over what's happening at the dance, and that's why a lot of these have been requested to have a police officer there who has the authority to shut it down, in other words.
With the leasing.
So that's something that, to look at that level for policy making, okay?
Anything else there on your?
One other thing until we go into executive session. Budget was answered. The cable situation, I know she's taping again tonight, but man, all weekend, there's been no signal on any 3 of the town channels. Do we have an answer from the town hall? Is what's going on there, or?
No one wants to touch that with a 10-foot
I
pole.
would have to do a little more investigation through the chair,
Would you
because
please?
the last I got from Charter, as I had relayed to you a couple of weeks back, was they were waiting for specific
For us,
parts
right.
to repair. But I think it might have to go through the town manager to get to the bottom of it.
Total no signal again on any of the channels for the full weekend from Thursday night on, basically, okay?
Oh, maybe we can
So
look into
if-
coming, I know that the selectmen's meeting, I just happened to switch on, they have fixed their camera situation, so.
Right.
They used to have a split screen with 2 cameras, they have 1 camera now, so maybe we can get their 2 split cameras and get
Well, I
something
have
going,
talked
so
to
maybe
Tony,
we
and
can work.
like Alan said, we
Yes,
were
maybe
having
we're
some
coming.
part problems, but what we pay for cable in this community,
Yeah.
I'm only suggesting as our organization to
Some heat.
piggyback with the selectmen to get on
Absolutely.
this cable company.
I think they're
because
aware of it too,
I pay
so.
big money for cable and can't use it for anything. It's ridiculous. And I have voiced that, my opinion, to the selectmen, but I'm asking us as an organization here that uses it to also maybe forward a letter or call the selectmen in the town hall again and charter or whoever, that we can work together with the selectmen, because this is ludicrous. I mean, it's worse than the water company. We have no
Right.
competition. You can't get any other cable here, so
We
it's,
will look into that.
okay, please.
Thank you.
And I know I had asked you privately, and I know we will be discussing this, but I want it on public record. It's budget time, and we had Mrs. Baker in here, and I kind of grilled her, but I'm going to be grilling others at the same time. Our custodial and our food service, Angela is going to be retiring, and I know I had asked both of you, and you're working on it, I understand that, but I want the public to be aware that I'm also looking at the budget along with the rest of my committee who is diligently pursuing this budget this year, because it's going to be tough times, to further initiate, how do I want to say it, looking into how we are going to provide our services, maybe at, even if we have to, at a different type level or different type service than we are presently ourselves internally, with costs escalating not only from salaries to medical to whatever. I would like a study done on both both services and report back to us at a later date, please. Sure. Do you understand? I'm sorry I rambled on that. You understand what I'm getting at, I
Yep.
guess? If there are better ways to provide those services,
Services, yep.
or I'm always looking to economize and give the best service that we can with the money that's available to us. And if it means on some of those issues, in order to keep teachers in my classrooms, that's my main objective for the next few years, as these budgets continually stay tight.
Yep.
All right, Mrs. Coonan, I think I'll let it rest for tonight, and we'll go for January, okay?
Right.
Thank you.
Quick. Mr. Himmelberg, any news on our advisory council members and minutes from your administrative council?
I have passed along your wishes to the administrative team, and I would expect that they would be forthcoming.
Please.
I have emphasized it.
They should have their members by now, so that, I mean,
Yes.
that has to be.
Yes.
Minutes, well, they should have had at least one meeting.
At least they can meet.
Please, next time. I don't, Channel 13 was something I had on too. The only thing I have for the committee is something that has come up. I've spoken with Mr. Matthew. We have a little problem with our signing of our warrants. So I need you, you're fine. Poor Mrs. Coon's the only one here tonight.
No,
but they have to,
okay.
no, they have to be done on a weekly basis. So if everyone could take the time at least on Thursday, somewhere between at Thursday afternoon to Friday afternoon, to make a point to call, stop by, make arrangements at least once a week to sign the warrants. Please not wait for them to call us. Know that every Thursday and Friday, we have to show up to sign the warrants. Mr. Matthew will bring anything he has on Monday nights when we meet that needs to, but some of them go back, and the town really needs those done. So I think before, what we used to do is just wait for someone to call us to say they need to be done. I'm just going to tell everybody they need to be done. So if on Thursday afternoon or Friday, if you think you can get in, even just call the office and say, do you need my signature? I'll be here. But if everybody plans to be, and I will, to all members, on Thursday and Friday, that would be good, because the warrants will be there. And we're going to try this out. So at least that way we can get them. I mean, we need at least 3, but we like to have 4. So if we can get that, that would maybe help. And we're going to try this for the next, let's try this for the next month and see if it works. And if everybody gets in, that would be great. Mr. Peterson?
I agree, and I understand what you're saying, but
Right.
there are just, and Nada's been pretty good about it. If she winds up with if we go in and we sign the stack of warrants, and all of a sudden they have an extra one or an emergency warrant or something, that really does still require the phone call.
She would, but let's.
And I've had no problem. She's called me, and I've
Right.
swung by on the way to
Right.
work or after work to go in and
Right.
do it, just for that, Mr.
Right.
Matthew, that
Yep.
sometimes, 10 warrants are done, and then you've got an extra one that you
Right.
have to prepare Thursday
Absolutely.
or Friday, and I've already been in there. I need to know that that's there
Yep.
then.
Yep.
Okay.
What we've done is try to have the warrant available for the same time as the school committee packets. So
Right.
Thursday at 4 o'clock is our time frame to have the warrants completed for the following week. That provides you the opportunity to come in, sign, pick up your school committee packets every other week, et cetera.
Right, so we're just going to turn it now to that. It's our,
You need weekly,
thing.
not just every
Well, yeah,
other.
Yeah, we-
the
right,
warrants are
right.
weekly, but the school committee
right, so we'll
packets are
always,
bi-weekly.
on a Thursday
right.
afternoon to Friday night, sometime make it that arrangement just to stop by and sign those, and that would be great. And that's all I have tonight, other than on behalf of the school committee to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a healthy, Happy New Year, which I'm sure we all like. Our next meeting date is going to be January 11th. We will not be meeting at the end of December unless for some reason there's an emergency, but I don't anticipate that. I will open the floor now. Any comments or concerns? Seeing none, I will close the floor. Tonight, we do have a request for executive session, Chapter 39, subsection 23B3, to discuss strategy with non-union personnel. We will only be coming out to adjourn, and that is all. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Call for the vote. Mrs. Coonan?
Yes?
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. 3 affirmative, 2 absent. We are now in executive session. Merry Christmas to everyone.